It was nearly midnight in the small, forgotten town of Rustville, Alabama. The only sounds were the distant chirps of crickets and the creaking of an old ceiling fan inside the Carter household. 13-year-old Emily Carter lay fast asleep on a thin mattress in the corner of the living room. Her long brown hair was tied back with a rubber band, and her legs curled under a worn-out blanket. She had lived with her stepmother, Sandra Carter, since her mother passed away when Emily was just 10. Her father, Robert Carter, worked oil rigs in Texas and had been gone for months, sending money home when he could. But his absence meant Sandra could do whatever she pleased. That night, Sandra barged into the room, her voice sharp and heartless. "Get up! Go buy matches for tomorrow." Emily blinked in confusion. "It's almost midnight. Can't I—" Before she could finish, a harsh slap landed across her face. She stepped into the dark, chilly night, the crumpled dollar bill clutched in her hand. She never made it to the store. Just a few steps down the road, a rough hand grabbed her from behind. A second hand covered her mouth. She kicked and thrashed, but it was useless. She was dragged into the woods. The next morning, she woke up in a patch of tall grass. Her dress was torn. Her body hurt. She didn't know what had happened exactly, but she knew something awful had been done to her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she walked home barefoot, every step a painful reminder of the night she couldn't remember. When Sandra saw her walk through the door in that state, she didn't ask a single question. She slapped her again, harder. "You disgusting little brat! You ran off with some boy, didn't you? Don't even try to cry. I won't let you shame this family like your mother did." Emily tried to speak, but Sandra didn't let her. "You're just like her. Useless. Weak. Stupid." She beat her with a broom handle until Emily collapsed on the floor. Over the next few weeks, Emily was constantly tired. Her appetite vanished. She started vomiting every morning. When Sandra realized what was happening, she dragged Emily to the community clinic. The result was undeniable. Emily was pregnant. 8 months. The nurse tried to speak kindly, but Sandra snapped before she could say a word. "Save it." "I knew this girl was a mistake from the beginning." She grabbed Emily's arm and dragged her outside. By the time they returned home, the entire neighborhood had heard the news. Neighbors whispered. Some snickered, others stared. "Did you hear? That Carter girl is knocked up at 13. Disgusting." Sandra didn't hide her shame. She stood in front of the house shouting loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just like her late mother. Slept around and got what she deserved. But I won't let this stain live in my house any longer." Emily sat on the porch steps in silence, hugging her knees, trying not to cry. Her father hadn't called. She had no phone. No one in that neighborhood would dare go against Sandra. They either laughed or stayed silent. That night, as the wind howled through the cracks in the windows, Emily whispered a quiet prayer into the darkness. "Please let Dad come home. Please save me. Please, anyone." But no one came. And the next morning, Sandra stood over her again, arms crossed. "Pack your things. Today's your wedding day." Emily looked up in confusion. "What?" "I found someone for you. A beggar." "A worthless man like you. You can rot together. That way, I won't have to see your cursed face anymore." She tossed a plastic grocery bag at her feet. Inside were a few worn clothes and a toothbrush. "Be ready in 10 minutes. Emily didn't move. "I said, get up." She forced her 8-month pregnant stepdaughter to marry a beggar. He was a billionaire. Before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story! Sandra yanked her by the arm and dragged her to the front yard. Several neighbors had gathered. Some brought out their phones. Others just crossed their arms, shaking their heads. Standing at the edge of the road was a man Emily had never seen before. He wore a ragged hoodie, his jeans ripped at the knees. His hair was uncombed, his beard messy. He looked exhausted. Dirty, poor. That's your new husband, Sandra smirked. You two belong together. Emily's heart sank. Her hands clutched her belly. She was 8 months pregnant. She was just a child, and now married off like trash. No priest. No vows, no rings, just shame. Sandra shoved her toward the man. Take her, and don't ever bring her back. The man looked at Emily for a moment. His expression was unreadable, tired, but not unkind. Without a word, he turned and began walking. Emily followed. She didn't cry, not in front of them, not in front of the people who laughed. But inside, she was falling apart. As they left Rustville, Emily glanced back one last time. The porch where she used to play, the bedroom she once shared with her mother, gone. She whispered under her breath, God, don't let this be the end of my story. Let her kneel before me someday. And with that, she took her first steps into the unknown. Married to a stranger, carrying a child, and with nothing left but hope. Emily walked in silence beside the stranger she had just been married to, Ethan. His shoes were worn thin. His hoodie smelled like old smoke and rain. But he walked with quiet purpose, never looking back, never saying a word. Behind them, the whispers of the neighborhood still echoed in her ears. She's ruined. What kind of girl gets pregnant at 13? Her stepmother did the right thing. Get her off our street. Now they can beg together. Emily tried to block it out, but the shame wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Her belly was swollen. Her back ached. She was tired, hungry, confused. Who was this man? Where were they going? What would he do to her? She didn't dare ask. She had no more strength to fight, only to follow. They walked for nearly an hour, out of town, and down an old gravel path that led toward the edge of a pine forest. The sky was overcast, the wind cold. Her legs felt like lead, but Ethan never slowed down. Finally, he stopped beneath a cluster of tall trees. He turned to her for the first time since the wedding. Rest here. Emily lowered herself onto a large rock, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her feet throbbed, her shoulders sagged. The silence between them stretched for several minutes. Do you hate me? She asked quietly. Ethan glanced at her. No. Why did you agree to marry me? He didn't answer. A moment later, a low rumble echoed through the trees. Emily looked up. Far down the path, dust began to rise, and then she saw it. A sleek black SUV rolled toward them, its windows tinted and clean. Behind it, 2 more identical vehicles followed in a slow, smooth convoy. When they stopped in the clearing, several men in black suits stepped out. Their movements were sharp, coordinated. Like trained security, Emily stood, frozen. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. One of the suited men walked up to Ethan and said respectfully, "Everything is ready, Mr. Cross." Mr. Cross. Emily looked at him again. The hoodie, the ripped jeans, the unshaved face. Was this Some kind of trick? Ethan turned to her, his face finally softening. "Emily," he said gently, "you're safe now." "Safe? What is this? Who are you?" "I'm not a beggar," he said quietly. "My name is Ethan Cross, CEO of Cross Automotive." She blinked. "You're what?" "I didn't tell you earlier. I couldn't. If Sandra had known who I really was, she would have never agreed to let you go. But I knew your story, and I couldn't stand by and do nothing." Emily's legs gave way beneath her, and she sat back down. Her mind spun. Her vision blurred. "You knew about me? One of my drivers used to live in Rustville. He told me everything. About Sandra, about what you went through, about how no one lifted a finger to help you. I had to step in." Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She wasn't sure whether it was from relief or fear. "You mean this was all planned? Only because I didn't want you to suffer anymore. But why me?" she whispered. "I'm no one." Ethan kneeled in front of her. "You're not no one. You're strong. You survived what most people couldn't. You still carry hope in your eyes. That's not nothing, Emily. That's rare." She didn't know what to say. She had expected more cruelty, more shame. Instead, she was being offered safety? Ethan stood and nodded toward the SUV. "Come on. Let's go. You need rest and real food." Emily hesitated, then slowly followed him toward the vehicle. A guard opened the door for her as if she were royalty. She stepped into plush leather seats that smelled of lavender and new car. As they drove away from Rustville, she watched the trees blur past. She couldn't believe this was happening. Just an hour ago, she had been thrown away like garbage. Now she was sitting in a luxury SUV with a billionaire, one who had stepped into her life when everyone else had turned their backs. Was it real? Was this just a dream? She glanced at Ethan again. He stared out the window, quiet, calm, in control. "Why me?" she asked again. Without turning, he said, "Because someone had to do what was right." As the convoy rolled down the long, winding road, Emily placed a hand on her belly. The baby kicked softly. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. The ride was quiet, but Emily's mind was loud. She sat in the back seat of the sleek black SUV, the soft leather cradling her body like she'd never known comfort before. Her hands rested gently on her belly. The baby shifted. Her breath caught. Across from her sat the man she'd been forced to marry just hours ago, Ethan Cross. No longer looking like a beggar, now he looked composed. Still in ragged clothes, yes, but his energy had shifted. The way the security men respected him. The way the SUV responded to his every word. "Are you really a CEO?" Emily asked hesitantly. Ethan turned to her, his face calm. "Yes, I own Cross Automotive. We design electric trucks. Our headquarters is in San Francisco, but I live outside Santa Barbara." Emily blinked. She knew none of those places. She'd never even left Rustville. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Ethan sighed. "Because people don't treat you the same when they know you have money. They either want something, or they get fake. I've spent the last few years learning who's real." She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "So why marry me?" "Because I wanted to help you, and this was the only way to get you out of there. Your stepmother would have never let you go, unless she believed you were being discarded. Emily's jaw tightened. The memory of Sandra throwing her suitcase on the ground still burned fresh. Well, she succeeded. She made sure the entire town saw it. And one day, Ethan said softly, they'll see you again, but standing taller than all of them. The convoy slowed. Emily looked out the window. Ahead was a large wrought-iron gate surrounded by tall hedges and towering oak trees. A stone plaque at the entrance read, "Cross Estate, Private Property." As the gate opened automatically, her eyes widened. Beyond the trees lay a massive ocean view mansion, its glass walls glimmering in the sunset. Perfectly manicured gardens stretched out in every direction, dotted with fountains, sculptures, and winding stone paths. The ocean roared in the distance, just beyond the cliffs. This is where you live?" Ethan nodded. "I had it built after my wife passed away. It's been quiet ever since." Emily stayed quiet. Her fingers tightened on her seatbelt. What kind of life had she just stepped into? When the SUV stopped, 2 uniformed staff members opened her door. Emily hesitated, unsure whether she should step out barefoot and dirty onto a driveway that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Ethan noticed. "You don't have to prove anything here. Just be yourself." He helped her out gently. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but she kept moving. Inside, the house was even more breathtaking. White marble floors, towering ceilings, soft jazz music playing in the background. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and something expensive she couldn't name. She felt completely out of place. "This can't be for me," she muttered. "It is," Ethan said. "And it's just the beginning." A woman in scrubs approached them. "This is Dr. Herrera," Ethan explained. "She's been briefed. She'll run a full checkup and monitor your pregnancy moving forward." Emily's mouth opened slightly. A personal doctor. You need proper care. The baby does too. But why go this far for someone like me?" Ethan looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something behind his eyes. Pain, maybe. Loneliness. Because once, someone helped me, when I was nobody. And I promised myself that if I ever had the power, I'd do the same for someone else. Emily sat down slowly on a plush cream-colored couch. She didn't cry, but her throat tightened. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "Maybe not, but I know what broken feels like. I know what it's like to be thrown away, and I know it doesn't have to stay that way." Later that evening, after a hot bath and fresh clothes, Emily stood in front of a full-length mirror. She barely recognized herself. The bruises were still there, but so was something new: dignity. The doctor had confirmed the baby was healthy. Her due date was soon. She sat on the edge of the bed in her new guest room, overlooking the sea. The waves crashed softly outside. The sheets were smooth and warm. "Why me?" she whispered again into the dark. There was no answer, but for the first time the silence didn't feel cruel. It felt healing. In the hallway, Ethan stood alone, staring out at the water. He thought about the girl down the hall, the one the world had labeled worthless. He knew better. He saw in her what the world had missed: strength, fire. A story worth saving, and soon, a story the world would never forget. Emily sat by the window in her guest room, watching the ocean crash against the cliffs. The sky was glowing with soft orange light. The days had passed quietly, maybe too quietly. She had been living in Ethan's mansion for nearly a month now. The doctor visited every other day. The housekeepers treated her with gentle care. The food was warm. The bed was soft. But in her heart, she still didn't know how to feel. She was safe, but also scared. She had learned not to trust calm, because calm never lasted long. That evening, Emily went into labor. The staff acted fast. Dr. Herrera arrived within minutes. Ethan stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand while she cried, screamed, and pushed through hours of pain. "You're doing amazing," he whispered. "Just a little more." And when the cries of a newborn finally filled the room, Emily collapsed into tears. "It's a boy," Dr. Herrera smiled. "A healthy, beautiful baby boy." They placed the tiny bundle in her arms. His eyes were shut, his fingers clenched. His skin was soft and warm. "Noah," she whispered. "I'll name you Noah." The next few weeks were some of the happiest and most healing of Emily's life. She would wake to Noah's cries and smile, even through the exhaustion. Ethan hired 2 nannies to help, but Emily insisted on doing much of it herself. Changing diapers, holding him through the night, humming lullabies. For the first time since her mother died, she felt like she mattered. She had someone who needed her, someone who loved her back. Ethan never pushed her. He gave her space, but was always nearby, watching, protecting, supporting. She began to laugh again, to eat better, to plan. She wanted to go back to school. She wanted to work with kids one day. She wanted to show Noah the world, but life has a cruel way of testing fragile hope. It was late one night when it happened. Emily had just fed Noah and laid him in his crib. The house was quiet, only the distant hum of ocean waves. Then suddenly, a sharp, high-pitched cry, followed by silence. Emily rushed to the crib. Noah's face was red, his tiny mouth wide open, gasping, his body jerked. "Noah?" she panicked. "Noah, baby?" He was choking. She screamed. Ethan came running down the hall. He saw her on the floor, holding the baby, sobbing. "Call the doctor." "Call the car," he shouted to the staff. The driver pulled the SUV around in record time. Emily sat in the back, cradling Noah, whispering his name over and over. But before they reached the hospital, Noah's cries had stopped. His body had gone still. Inside the ER, doctors rushed him away. Emily sat shaking in the waiting room, her clothes damp from tears and sweat. Ethan sat beside her, one hand on her back, silent. Minutes later, a doctor came out. "I'm sorry. We did everything we could. He's gone." Emily didn't cry. She just stared. Back at the mansion, the nursery was empty. The crib was untouched. The baby blankets were folded. His name still hung on the wall in soft wooden letters. Noah. Emily stayed in bed for 2 days without speaking. No food. No light, just a void that swallowed everything. On the 3rd day, she found a knife in the kitchen drawer. She brought it to her room, sat on the floor. Her hands trembled. She didn't want to die. She just didn't want to feel. She lifted the blade. And then Ethan burst in. "Emily, no!" He dropped to his knees, grabbing her wrist. The knife clattered to the floor. Emily sobbed, shaking, collapsing into his arms. "Why?" she cried. "Why would God give him to me only to take him away?" Ethan held her tightly, tears forming in his own eyes. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I do know this isn't the end. You are not alone. And you are not done. It took weeks, but slowly, Emily began to breathe again. She started walking outside, reading books, sitting with Ethan in the garden. The pain never left, but it stopped screaming. And one morning, she opened her laptop, Googled GED prep courses, and clicked Enroll. Ethan saw her printing study sheets at the kitchen counter. Back to school? He smiled. Emily gave a small nod. Yeah. I think I need to do something. For yourself? He asked. She looked at him. For Noah. And so, the girl who was thrown away pregnant, the girl who lost her baby to the cold hands of fate, began her slow, painful climb back up. Not to forget, but to build something new from everything she'd lost. It began with a laptop, a pair of cheap headphones, and a printed study guide stained with coffee. Every morning, Emily woke up before sunrise, made herself tea, and sat by the window of her guest room, Noah's blanket folded neatly beside her chair. The ocean was still dark, the sky just starting to bleed light over the water. She logged into her GED course, took notes, and whispered definitions aloud. Hypotenuse, constitutional democracy, photosynthesis. It had been years since she'd opened a textbook, but something had changed inside her. The girl who once believed her story had ended in shame, now believed it had barely begun. Ethan kept his promise. He gave her space, but also support. Quietly, he paid for her classes, upgraded her laptop, and made sure her favorite tea was always stocked in the kitchen. But he never took credit. One night, Emily asked him, "Why are you still here?" Ethan shrugged. Because sometimes, people just need someone to stay. Within months, Emily passed her GED with top marks. Her name was listed on the state website for high scorers. She stared at it for 10 full minutes. Emily Carter, passed with honors. She printed it, framed it, and placed it next to Noah's picture on her nightstand. But she didn't stop there. She enrolled in an online college program in computer science, drawn to the challenge of logic and building things that worked. The world of code fascinated her. It was the opposite of her life, structured, clean, solvable. She took night classes. She watched tutorials. She failed her first programming exam and cried into her pillow. But she didn't quit. And when she passed her final Python certification with a perfect score, Ethan clapped so loudly the staff downstairs thought someone had proposed. "You're not the same girl who walked out of that town," he said proudly. "No," Emily replied. "I'm stronger." But success didn't heal everything. One night, Emily walked into Noah's old nursery and sat down in the dark. Her hand rested on the edge of the empty crib. She whispered, "I hope you see me, baby boy. I hope I'm making you proud." That's when the idea came. What if she could help other people like her? Girls who had no one. Kids who needed care. Families who couldn't afford treatment. That night, she pulled out a notebook and wrote the words, "The Noah Foundation, Healing Through Hope." It started small, just an online form and a GoFundMe link. Ethan quietly matched every dollar. She used her programming skills to build the website herself. Her mission, to help children and struggling families afford life-saving surgeries. In 3 months, she raised over $12,000. In 6 months, she helped 2 children receive heart surgery. In a year, her story had been featured in 3 local newspapers and on a morning talk show. People didn't just donate, they believed. Soon, Emily opened a small office space in downtown Santa Barbara. The Noah Foundation banner hung proudly in the front window. She hired a part-time assistant, a former foster kid, who reminded her of herself. Her phone rang every day. Mothers begging for help, teens asking how to get back in school, nurses referring desperate families with nowhere else to turn. And every time she sent an approval letter or wired money for a procedure, she whispered the same words. "This one's for you, Noah." At the end of her first year, the Noah Foundation had funded 23 surgeries. Kids who might have died now ran on playgrounds. Parents who had once given up now smiled again. Emily stood in the mirror one evening, adjusting a navy blue blazer for her first fundraising gala. She hardly recognized the young woman staring back. Strong shoulders, confident eyes. "Purpose. Mom," she whispered. "I think I finally found who I'm supposed to be." Later that night at the gala, she took the stage to speak. Ethan watched from the front row. "I was once a girl no one believed in. A girl thrown out like garbage because I was pregnant and broken and scared. But someone took a chance on me. And because of that chance, I found my way back." The audience applauded. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. This foundation isn't just about surgeries. It's about second chances, because if a lost girl like me can rise up, then so can anyone. When the event ended, she stepped outside alone, barefoot on the marble patio under the moonlight. Ethan joined her quietly. "You were incredible," he said. "I feel like I can finally breathe," she said. "Like I'm no longer surviving. I'm actually living. So what now?" She looked out over the dark water. "Now I go back, not to stay, just to visit." "It's time I faced what I left behind." Ethan nodded. He knew exactly what she meant. It was a quiet afternoon in Emily's office at the Noah Foundation. Sunlight poured through the large windows, lighting up a photo wall filled with smiling children. The ones she had helped, the ones she had saved. She was reviewing an urgent case from New Mexico when her assistant Claire knocked gently. "Emily, there's someone here to see you." Emily looked up. "A donor?" Claire hesitated. "No, it's your father." Emily's heart stopped for a moment. She hadn't seen her father, Robert Carter, in nearly 6 years. Not since he left for that oil rig job in Texas. Not since the night she was assaulted, thrown out and married off like unwanted garbage. Her hands trembled, but she nodded. "Send him in." The door opened, and there he was, older. Thinner, his beard was grey and his shoulders slightly hunched, but his eyes, they were the same. Warm, regretful. "Emily." She stood still, frozen. Then, without a word, her father rushed forward and wrapped her in his arms. For the first time since childhood, she let him. She didn't cry, not yet. "I've been looking for you," he whispered, voice breaking. "I came back to Rustville, and they told me what Sandra did, what she said. I failed you. I let her raise you alone." "I should have never left." Emily pulled back slowly. "You didn't just fail me," she said softly. "You abandoned me. You left me in the hands of the woman who killed Mom." Robert froze. "What?" She took a breath. Calm. Steady. The words had been buried for years, and now it was time to let them rise. "I saw it. I told Mom not to eat Sandra's food that day. She didn't believe me. After she died, Sandra never forgave me for knowing the truth. She did everything she could to break me after that." Her father sat down, his face pale. "She poisoned Angela?" "Yes." "And you? She beat me, sold me off." You have no idea what I survived." Robert covered his face, silent. "There's more," Emily continued. "Sandra is here." "In L.A." He looked up, confused. "What?" "She's sick. A tumor behind her eyes. She's going blind." The room went still. Robert's lips parted, but no words came out. "She came to the foundation last week under a fake name. One of our partner doctors recognized her and told me she needs emergency surgery." "And?" Robert asked. "What did you do?" Emily walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline. "I approved the case." Her father stood. "You're helping her? After everything she did?" "Yes." "Why?" Emily turned around, her voice firm but quiet. "Because she needs to see me now. Not the pregnant girl she threw away. Not the shame she spit on. She needs to see the woman I've become, and then she can live with it." Later that evening, at the hospital, Sandra lay in a recovery room, groggy from surgery. The bandages had just been removed. She blinked. Light returned to her eyes, and the first person she saw standing at the end of her bed was Emily. In a tailored blazer, calm, poised, unshakable. Sandra tried to speak, but no words came. "Hello, Sandra," Emily said evenly. "Your surgery was successful. You'll have your vision back completely in a few weeks." Sandra sat up slowly. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you, after what I did to you?" Emily didn't flinch. "Because I didn't become like you. That was your biggest fear, wasn't it? That I'd rise above your cruelty, that your hatred would fail." Sandra broke into tears. I was wrong." Emily nodded. "Yes, and now you get to live long enough to see just how wrong you were." A week later, the news came. Sandra Carter had taken her own life. She left behind a note, short, barely legible. "I couldn't bear the weight of what I've done. I don't deserve to see the light again." Emily sat alone in her office when she heard. She didn't cry. She didn't celebrate. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "Rest, if you can. I already have." That night, as Ethan joined her for dinner, he noticed she was quieter than usual. "You okay?" "Yeah," she nodded. "It's done." He reached across the table, took her hand. "She didn't win, Emily. You did." She looked at him, a small smile forming. "No, Hope did." The waves rolled gently against the shore of Santa Barbara as the morning sun bathed the coastline in soft gold. Emily stood barefoot on the balcony of her bedroom, overlooking the ocean. The breeze tugged at her white robe. In the distance, seagulls circled in wide loops. It had been nearly 5 years since she left Rustville. 5 years since she had been cast out. Since she had walked down that dirt road pregnant, scared, and alone. Now, she was someone the world knew by name. The Noah Foundation had become one of the fastest-growing nonprofits in California, with chapters expanding into New Mexico and Texas. Her software platform, built from scratch, helped thousands apply for emergency medical aid across the country. Her TED Talk, "The Girl They Threw Away," had gone viral. She had been on morning shows, podcasts, even featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30. But none of that compared to what she had built inside herself. That night, the foundation was hosting its largest fundraising gala yet, an elegant outdoor event under string lights and white tents. The guests wore suits and gowns, and the air buzzed with purpose and pride. Emily took the stage to speak, microphone in hand, the backdrop lit with images of children her foundation had helped. "There was a time I thought my life was over," she began. "When I was 13, I was thrown out of my home. 8 months pregnant, married off to a man I didn't know. People laughed. People turned away. I was called a curse, a disgrace." The crowd went quiet. "But that man, Ethan, he wasn't who they thought he was, and I wasn't who they thought I was either." She smiled softly, locking eyes with Ethan in the front row. "I thought I was alone. I was wrong, and because one person believed in me, I found the strength to believe in others." Applause thundered through the tent. Ethan rose to his feet. Later that night, after the gala ended, Ethan met Emily on the balcony overlooking the sea. She stood there in silence, wind in her hair, eyes distant. "You did it," he said softly. "No," she whispered. "We did." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I've waited years to ask you this, because I wanted you to choose from a place of freedom, not pain." She turned to him. "Emily Carter, will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were from joy. "Yes." The wedding was intimate, elegant, and emotional. Held on the same cliffside where Ethan first brought her years ago, it was attended by close friends, foundation staff, and a few reporters who had followed her journey since day one. Emily wore a flowing ivory gown, simple and stunning. Ethan stood in a tailored navy suit, hands steady but heart-pounding. Her father, Robert Carter, walked her down the aisle, his face beaming with pride and silent redemption. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he whispered. "I learned it from surviving," she replied. The ceremony was short, but every word meant something. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," the applause echoed across the cliffs. Weeks later, Emily made a quiet trip back to Rustville. No press. No staff, just herself and Ethan. She walked through the town slowly, passing the houses that had once stared her down in judgment. A few faces peeked out through curtains. A few gasps slipped into the wind. She didn't stop. She didn't need to prove anything. She simply made her way to a small cemetery on the hill. There, beneath a simple stone that read, "Angela Carter, beloved mother." Gentle soul. Emily knelt and placed a bouquet of white lilies. "Hi, Mama," she whispered, voice trembling. I kept going, even when it hurt, even when it broke me. I became the woman you would have wanted me to be. She wiped a tear and smiled softly. She tried to destroy me, but she couldn't. You live in me, and your granddaughter's name will carry your strength. She stood, brushing her hand across the stone one last time. Ethan reached out and took her hand. Together, they walked away from the past. Back in Santa Barbara, months passed. Then one day, Emily stood on another hospital bed, this time holding a new baby girl in her arms. She was healthy, pink, strong. Emily named her Grace Angela Cross, and as she cradled the newborn, she whispered, "Your brother Noah made me fight. But you, Grace, you'll make me flourish." The cameras flashed at the Noah Foundation's annual conference that year. Behind Emily stood Ethan, Robert, Claire, and a dozen kids who had survived thanks to her mission. But in front of her stood a future she had built, brick by brick, wound by wound. She didn't win by revenge. She didn't win by hate. She won by becoming everything they said she couldn't be. And that was the most graceful victory of all. Would you have helped the stepmother? Rate this story 1 to 10 and comment below where you're watching from.